I'm going to tell this like I lived it. Breathless, bloody, a little bit glamorous, and all the way true. I won't tidy the edges for your comfort. I won't reduce my rage into cute quotes stitched on throw pillows. This is the story of how I found out my husband was sleeping with our live-in nanny, how I gathered my proof like pearls on a broken necklace, how I stood up in a room full of men who thought they owned me and said, "Actually, I own the room," and how I walked out with $5 million, my children, and my name. He walked out with a suitcase and a silence he still can't afford. I was married for 11 years to a man named Adrian. His laugh could start storms and stop them. He had the kind of charisma that makes waiters add extra cherries to your sundae, and judges consider the human side of the law. He co-founded a boutique real estate fund. He knew everybody and their secrets. He worshipped efficiency, polished shoes until he could see his own ambition in them, and kissed our babies like they were fragile gold. Her name was Tess. 24, a dimple that appeared only when she was lying. Soft hands, strong back. She lived in the carriage house over the garage and called me Miss L. She learned our rhythms like sheet music. Mornings were oatmeal and toothbrush battles. Afternoons were ballet slippers, Lego catastrophes, and dinosaur facts. Evenings were baths, pink lotion, and lullabies. Our daughter, Ivy, adored her. Our son, Theo, tolerated everyone but loved Tess. The first wrong note was a scent, sandalwood and something sweet, on Adrian's collar that wasn't mine. Not perfume exactly, body oil, youth. I could feel it in my teeth. Then came the vanishing shirts, the last-minute bored dinners, the way he'd go completely still when his phone buzzed, and read it like it might confess something if he stared long enough. Every woman who's ever loved a man knows the tilt of a lie before it falls. You don't make a life with someone and then accuse him with smoke. You gather fire. I started where any clever woman starts, the laundry room. Pockets tell on people. Receipts, gum wrappers, a hotel key card from a boutique place in Koreatown we'd never used. I tucked it into a book on the shelf, the one with the sun-faded dust jacket, and a dedication he never read, and kept smiling. I played the long game quietly. I set up a nanny cam in the playroom, another in the mudroom, one aimed across the driveway at the carriage house door. Pest problems, I said to myself in the mirror, practicing a face that didn't look like thunder. I changed the Wi-Fi passwords and watched who asked for them. Tess, Miss L, I think the internet flickered. Adrian, babe, can you fix the Wi-Fi? I'm running late. People say the truth sets you free. They forget to mention it shatters you on the way out. A Tuesday, nothing special. The children were at school. Adrian texted, going to view a site in Pasadena, late lunch. I answered, bring home strawberries for Ivy. He replied, of course, a heart, a lie. On my phone, a notification popped from the camera over the garage. Motion detected. I clicked. The carriage house door opened. Tess stepped out, tugging a sweater over a camisole like the weather wronged her. 2 minutes later, Adrian's SUV turned into the driveway. He parked in the far corner where our maple cast a shadow on shitty days and perfect ones. He got out. He didn't go into the main house. He went to her stairs. I watched him run his hand through his hair, his tell when he's nervous or excited, and take those steps like they were a promise. The door shut behind him. I went very, very still. In movies, this is where women scream, throw vases, drive cars into plate glass windows. I made tea. I stirred honey into it until my hand went numb, and I pretended it was because of the spoon. I didn't confront him that day. I didn't confront him the next week when his Pasadena lunch became a recurring event on his calendar. I gathered. I called a divorce attorney whose reputation is a razor inside velvet. I didn't cry. I learned. I learned the words for the money I built side by side with his bravado: community property, separate property, appreciation, dissipation, fiduciary duty, marital waste. I learned that in our state, adultery wouldn't get him stoned in a square, but it would make judges look closely at how he managed our money, our time, our trust. I learned how to freeze a line of credit in 5 minutes flat. I learned how to breathe like someone who has decided to survive. Meanwhile, inside the theater of our home, I practiced normal. Good morning, darling. Sweet dreams. Angels. Plates clinked. Bathwater ran. Tess read Goodnight Moon like it was scripture. And Adrian kissed the top of my head and told me I was his heart. When he slept, I watched his phone face down on the nightstand like a snake coiled to strike. I never touched it. I didn't need to. I had cameras and the patience of a god. One evening, I sent him to the grocery store for milk. He came back with tulips and almond milk and the floppy smile of a man rehearsing repentance. While he put flowers in a vase, my lawyer filed for temporary restraining orders on our joint accounts. You'd be shocked how quiet the world becomes when bank cards stop singing. The night I confronted him, it was raining. Of course it was raining. He came home in that scent again, sandalwood and sweet. I was waiting in the kitchen with the Nanny cam footage on the iPad, a folder of bank statements, and a heart that had decided to speak before it broke. Adrian, I said, calm like a doctor, I'm going to ask you a question. This is your one chance to answer it honestly. He took in the iPad, the papers, my face. He went for his charm the way drowning men reach for the surface. What's wrong, babe? How long? I said. Have you been sleeping with Tess? Silence, a heavy, stunned kind. Rain ticked against the window like a metronome. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The word sleeping lodged somewhere in his throat and came out as It's complicated. It is simple, I said. I pressed play. There we were, the two of them, like a crime you can rewind. Tess opening the carriage house door. Adrian entering without hesitation. A laugh, a hand in hair, a body pressed against a door frame I painted myself, while he took a call from Monaco about a fund I negotiated. The video cut off at the threshold, tasteful as a prudish ant. I didn't need the rest. Neither did he. Lena, he said, using my name like a plea, don't do this. You did this, I said, and for the first time since I was 20 years old, I didn't see him as the man who made me a mother. I saw him as a man who wanted to be applauded for breaking the rules of a house he didn't build. He tried all the doors in that kitchen. He tried love. It meant nothing. You mean everything. He tried contempt. She's a child. You're a queen. He tried therapy. We're stressed. We can fix it. He tried rage. Finally, he tried the truth. I don't know why I did it. I believe him. Men like Adrian can sell rain to the ocean and still be confused by their own thirst. Pack a bag, I said. You're leaving tonight. Where will I? The hotel in Koreatown, I said. You know the way." He stared at me as if I'd slapped him. I didn't. I did something worse. Ivy and Theo's rooms are not your confessionals. You will see them on a schedule we agree on in writing. Any conversation with me will go through counsel. The nanny is done as of now. She will be escorted off the property in 10 minutes by security. She will receive 2 weeks' pay and a signed acknowledgement she violated her employment contract. I have receipts. So do you. Tess walked in then, not knowing the world had shifted 6 inches to the left. She took one look at my face, set the tote bag on the island, and went pale. "Miss L," she whispered. Why do we call men sir and women miss and wonder why the world tilts? I looked at her like a neighbor and a stranger and a person who had been in my house for a year, practicing a betrayal so polite it set the table. "You can keep calling me Miss L," I said softly, "but you cannot live here anymore." She started to cry. Small, perfect tears like the ones actresses practice in the mirror. The nanny agency sent them trained now. CPR, conflict resolution, choreography of sorrow. He told me. "I don't care what he told you," I said. "Leave." She left. He left. I locked the door, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark until the house creaked itself to sleep. The next morning, I was at my lawyer's office at 8:15 sharp. She wore a navy suit that could cut glass and pearls that had seen 3 decades of men make fools of themselves. We drew maps, we listed assets, we circled leverage like cities under siege. The house, mine before marriage, the lake cabin, ours, the brokerage account, ours, the art, mine, mostly. The watches, his, definitely. The business shares, complicated. The trust for the children, untouchable. We marked the cavalry, the nanny cam footage, the credit card receipts, the hotel key card fished from a book spine. "Adultery isn't a sword in this state," my attorney said, tapping her pen, "but it's a mirror." Judges don't love mirrors. We filed for temporary orders, exclusive use of the home, temporary custody schedule, freezes on discretionary accounts, forensic accounting of his business distributions, preservation of electronic evidence. If he tried to move money, we had hands waiting on the switch. If he tried to spin a tale, we had transcripts. He tried both. Of course he did. He hired an attorney who wore laughter like a cologne. "This is a garden variety marital misunderstanding," the man said, gesturing at my marriage like a shrub that needed pruning. "No need to scorch the earth." "We plan to landscape," my attorney replied, and smiled like a blade. Adrian sent flowers. He sent a letter, 4 pages single-spaced, about soulmates and oxygen and mistakes that shouldn't define lifetimes. He sent the 5 muskiest apologies money could buy. Therapy appointments, a full accounting of his lunches. A promise to fire himself from my heart if that's what I needed. I needed more than fired. I needed to break the lease. Some wives forgive. They build something new on top of something broken and learn to be brave when the wind blows. I didn't. Maybe I could have. Maybe in another version of my life I do. But in this one, I watched my children climb into bed with me that first week after he left, hot and heavy and full of their dreams. And I decided to make our home a place where promises didn't bleed. I filed for divorce. Things happen quickly, and then they happen slowly. My days became a choreography. Kids, lawyers, School drop offs, depositions, whispered reassurances in car seats, grocery store aisles, where I realized we were out of strawberries. At the same minute, I realized I was out of patience. At night, I cried in the shower so my children wouldn't see me salt. In between, I became competent in a way that scared me. Adrian's business wasn't as healthy as his Instagram. Forensic accountants, bless the quiet wolves, pulled threads until the sweater fell apart. Risky debt, over leveraged plays, fancy dinners classified as client retention. When the image cracked, his investors got nervous. Nervous money moves. 3 pulled out, 2 sued. 1, a celebrity with a jawline the internet worships, posted a vague quote about honor, and the fund's phone stopped ringing. He tried to blame me privately for the timing. If you'd waited, Lena, we could have handled this with dignity, as if the house fire should schedule itself around his cocktail hour. I didn't answer. My lawyer did. We went to mediation. It felt like divorce prom. Too much perfume, too many lies, everybody pretending they were 16 and innocent. He offered numbers that would make your grandmother put down her rosary and cuss. I countered with facts. We moved dance cards, we took breaks, we ate mints like penance. When I got tired, I pictured Ivy's braid under my palm and Theo's dinosaur facts. Mom, did you know a velociraptor had feathers? No, baby. Tell me everything. I kept going. In the end, oh, the end is never the end, but this end, he signed. A settlement that made the room go quiet for a beat. The house, mine, clear. The lake cabin, sold. My share in cash. Brokerage accounts split with an additional equalization payment to me. Art mine. The bulk of the retirement accounts rolled into my name, and a lump sum buyout on marital claims against his business interests. Clean, final, irrevocable. $5 million when you added everything that hit my accounts that month. Cash out from assets, equalizations, buyout, fees he covered because he dragged us here with hubris. $5 million. He blinked as the mediator read the numbers. I watched the math hit him like weather. He had expected to talk me down with old softness, with memories of the babies, with the joke about my terrible parallel parking. He didn't expect the woman across from him to know the difference between ROTH and traditional, between paper gains and liquid assets, between what feels fair and what a judge will sign. He didn't expect me to be the CFO of my future. The ink dried. The wire transfers landed. My email chimed. Funds received. I stood in my kitchen, and laughed like a woman who'd tamed her own storm. I poured myself a glass of water, cold as a new beginning, and toasted the ceiling. I wanted champagne, but it felt right to toast with something that keeps you alive. Adrian. He became a ghost at the edge of the gouache painting he'd hoped his life would be. Clients vanished. The fund limped. He sold his watch collection in a private sale with men who wear grief and Gucci. He moved into a rental that backed up to a freeway. His car, once leased, now bought, started to be a liability more than a flex. He cut his hair too short and grew it too long and tried on pennants like suits, returning most of them, because they didn't fit. When the celebrity jawline sued loudly, he settled quietly with money he didn't have. And then he called me to ask if he could adjust his payment schedule. I forwarded his message to my lawyer and then went to Ivy's school play, where she was a sun with sparkly rays and forgot 2 of her lines, and beamed anyway. Tess? She disappeared into the city like spilled glitter. Messily, beautifully, everywhere, and nowhere. Someone sent me a screenshot of her soft launch of a new boyfriend's wrist. I didn't comment. I hope she gets therapy and a therapist who doesn't let her weaponize dimples. I hope she never works in a house again without understanding that love is not a buffet where you nibble at every plate. Me? I bought myself a bed that felt like a promise and new sheets that felt like a secret. I put the children's rooms exactly how they wanted them. Glow in the dark stars on the ceiling for Theo, a canopy of chiffon for Ivy, because she said she wanted to sleep under a cloud. I took my mother on a trip she'd never have taken on her own. A little inn by the sea with scones in the morning and wind in the afternoon. I sat on a rock, watched the horizon, and allowed my body to stop bracing for impact. I learned to invest on my own terms. Dividend yields made me happier than red souls. I set up a donor-advised fund in my grandmother's name. She raised 6 kids on casseroles and stubbornness, and never saw Paris. I hired a new nanny, a woman in her 50s with an iron spine, a laugh like a song, and references that made me want to kiss their authors. "We will respect each other," I told her in the interview, and she looked me in the eye and said, "Of course we will, dear." The first week, she baked cinnamon rolls and taught Theo how to prove he loved dinosaurs using fractions. I cried in the pantry, then wiped my face and went back to the kitchen like a person who can do this. Because I can. Do I still ache? Of course. Truth shatters you on the way out. But the pieces grow gardens when you plant them well. Sometimes, late, I walk through my house barefoot, toes touching the grain of the floors, lights off, moonlight like a benediction. I stand at the window that frames the maple and the carriage house beyond it, and I let the memory rise like a ghost and then float away. That door is shut. That chapter is archived. That girl, me, is both yesterday and never again. Here is what I know now, and you can write it on the inside of your wrist if you need to remember. Love is not blindness. It is the courage to see. Boundaries are not bars. They are bridges that don't collapse under lies. Money is not a man's language. It is a mother's inheritance, and we learn to speak it with fluency that feeds our children. I did not win because I took him to the cleaners. I won because I refused to launder his choices with my silence. I walked away with $5 million. Yes, but the currency that saved me was colder, older, truer, proof, patience, and a name I decided to keep. My name is Lena. I am the woman who changed the locks, called the lawyer, froze the accounts, kissed her children's foreheads, and lit a candle at the kitchen sink just to watch a small flame behave. I am the woman who did not burn the house down when she could have, because I wanted my babies to grow up knowing warmth that wasn't born of arson. Adrian is broke. I am not. He is learning thrift. I am learning ease. He is finding out what it means to count. I am finding out what it means to add. If you are where I was, if a scent that isn't yours lives on a collar that is, believe your bones. Gather your proof. Make your tea. Call the woman with pearls sharp enough to cut a narrative. You do not have to be loud to be lethal. You do not have to be cruel to be clean. You do not need permission to keep everything you built. I didn't ask. I took back what was already mine. If the story hit home, do me a favor. Tap that like button so more people can find it. Subscribe for more chapters like this and drop a comment. What was your turning point? Or what part resonated most? Your likes, subs, and comments keep these stories going. Yellow.